Who were the giants of ancient Egypt? This is the lost legacy of the non-human pharaohs. We know the DNA of King Tut was different from human Homo sapien DNA in that it was very intense, and we also have research evidence saying that his bones were much more heavy and fortified as compared to the human Homo sapien bones. Now, how did humans move blocks of tons of weight when building the pyramids? That and other questions have led us to question the existence of giants in ancient Egypt. How did humans move blocks tons of weight when building the pyramids? Is there really conclusive evidence to prove these extraordinary claims? History has repeatedly led us to think that the rulers of ancient Kemet, that's the ancient name for Egypt, which means the black land, were not ordinary humans. Some say them elongated skulls, others describe them as quasi-spiritual beings, and others as giants of ancient Egypt. And to support this theory is one of the legends that tells us how the pyramids of Giza were built at the hands of a race of giants. This theory was shared by a lecture called Atlantis and the Ancient Gods by the occultist Freemason Manly P. Hall. Quote, "We are told that in the year 820 AD, way back in the days of the glory of Baghdad, the great Sultan, the follower and descendant of the great El-Rashid of Arabian Nights, the Sultan El-Rashid al-Ma'mun, decided to open the Great Pyramid. He had been told that it had been built by giants, who were called the Shaddai, superhuman beings, and that within that pyramid and those pyramids, they had stored a great treasure beyond the knowledge of man," end quote. Although it's true that in the year 832 AD, Al-Ma'mun traveled to Egypt and was the first to explore the Great Pyramid in a time where it was still covered in white limestone. However, who the Shaddai are is a mystery that continues to this present day. According to some, it could be referring to another name of the Shem Su Hor, or followers of Horus, while others say it could refer to Shaddai bin Ad, king of Ad, who was believed to be the king of the lost Arabian city of Iram of the Pillars, an account of which is mentioned in the Surah 89 of the Quran. He's sometimes referred to as a giant. And we have pictures of monumental constructions in Egypt and the relationship with the giants. The Akbar al-Zaman, also known as the Book of the Watchers, circa 900 to 1100 AD, is an Arabian compilation of ancient traditions in Egypt. The Book of the Wonders, not Watchers, sorry. The Book of Wonders, the Arabian compilation of ancient traditions in Egypt and the pre-Diluvian world. That's before the Great Flood. It claims that the people of Ad were giants, so Shaddad could be one of these giants. It's said that he, quote, built the monuments of Dashur with the stones that had been carved in the time of his father, end quote. Before that, the giant Harjit had begun its construction. At a later date, Quaftarim, another giant, quote, placed secrets in the pyramids of Dashur and other pyramids to imitate what had been done of old. He founded the city of Dendera, end quote. Dashur consists of the Red Pyramid and Bent Pyramid constructed during the reign of Pharaoh Sneferu, 2613 to 2589 BC. And on the other side, Dendera consists of highly decorated pillars dedicated to the goddess Hathor. The extent also mentions that the city of Memphis was built by a group of giants who lived after the Great Flood and served King Misraim, who was also known as a giant. Even later still, it describes the work of more of these colossals. Adim was a giant with insurmountable strength and the greatest of men. He ordered the quarrying of rocks and their transportation to build pyramids, as had been done in former times, end quote. So what do we make of these stories? Does it seem that Manly P. Hall was aware of this text and attempted to summarize it in his lecture? It's the opinion of the author that all ancient lore is worth acknowledging, as many of these traditions were relied on to carry knowledge and wisdom through the generations. Were the followers of Horus giants? The followers of Horus, who many have created the main mound, who may have created the main mound of Giza long before the Pharaohs, were believed to be giants. This is believed because at the end of the 4th millennium BC, those called disciples of Horus were a powerful aristocracy that ruled Egypt. Quote, towards the end of the 4th millennium BC, the people known as the disciples of Horus appear as a highly dominant aristocracy that governed entire Egypt. The theory of the existence of this race is supported by the discovery of the pre-dynastic tombs in the northern part of Higher Egypt, of the anatomical remains of individuals with bigger skulls and builds than the native population, with so much difference to exclude any hypothetical common racial strain, end quote. The theory about its existence is supported by the discovery of pre-dynastic tombs north of Upper Egypt. From the remains, archaeologists found skulls and constructions much larger than the rest stand out. The difference is such that any kind of common racial strain is ruled out. In fact, Professor Walter B. Emery, an Egyptologist who explored Saqqara in the 1930s, discovered the pre-dynastic remains. Emery discovered that the abnormally large remains belonged to people with blonde hair and much more robust complexion. He said that the strain was not native to Egypt, but that it was very important in Egyptians' government. He discovered that this group only mixed with other equally important aristocracies and were believed to be part of the followers of Horus. Khasek-Khemui was the last ruler of the second dynasty of Egypt, with its epicenter near Abydos. Abydos, we know, was the area where the Temple of Seti is, where we have that frieze with the hieroglyphs of the helicopters and jet airplanes and submarines, etc. He was present in the construction of Hierakonpolis, the pre-dynastic capital. He was buried in the necropolis of el-Kaab. His limestone tomb was investigated in 2001, surprising experts by the quality of the construction compared to the step pyramid of Djoser at Saqqara, which was dated to be the beginning of the Third Dynasty. Khasek-Khemui's remains were never found, so it's believed that it was looted long before. Flinders Petrie, who was the first to excavate the site, found evidence from the 3rd century BC that the pharaoh almost reached 2.5 meters in height. The Third Dynasty was responsible for the construction of the step pyramid of Saqqara, built with other temples in the complex. Djoser, who was in charge of burying Khasek-Khemui, who is suspected of being his son, ruled Saqqara during the construction of the pyramid. Within this complex, it was possible to photograph painting of a giant that clearly seemed to have an elongated skull. However, this could be a representation of skeletons that were excavated in the 1930s of individuals with large skulls and complexions. Now, in 1895 and 1896, the world's newspapers published a strange story about a photograph of the Temple of Isis. The first time the article appeared was in the Arizona Silver Belt, November 16, 1895, under the headline, quote, Prehistoric Egyptian Giants, end quote, and the article read as follows. In 1881, when Professor Timmerman was engaged in exploring the ruins of an ancient temple of Isis in the banks of the Nile, 16 miles below Najar Dufar, he opened a row of tombs in which some prehistoric race of giants had been buried. The smallest skeleton, out of some 60 odd, which were examined during the time of Timmerman, was excavating at Najar Dufar, measured 7 feet 8 inches in length and the largest 11 feet 1 inch. Memorial tablets were discovered in great numbers, but there was no record of that even hinted that they were in the memory of men extraordinary size. It's believed that the tombs date back to the year 1043 BC. According to the German newspaper Bild, Gregor Spory, a millionaire who owns a Swiss nightclub, took several photos of a mummified giant finger in the late 1980s. The owner was a retired grave robber who lived in Bierhooker, near Sadat city, about 100 kilometers from Cairo. The finger was 35 centimeters long, so it belonged to someone who easily exceeded 4 meters in height. That's over 14 feet. However, this finger was barely made public in 2012, 24 years later, and since then it has not been made official. According to Spori, the finger was found 150 years ago and had been in the family of the owner, who took the trouble to x-ray the finger to confirm its authenticity. According to some researchers, gigantic coffins are proofs of giants in Egypt, though it simply could be the case that they made them bigger than required to impress others, or to make it clear that the gods in the afterlife that they were of royal stock. On the other hand, there are a few accounts of giantism in the historical record. Egypt has two. Many unusually large skeletons and mummies could be just an example of giantism, but many have thrown questions as being without signs of any pituitary irregularity. Anyway, with these discoveries presented in this article, it simply builds a case for the existence of giants in prehistoric Egypt and around the world, and the more we explore the records of each country, the more examples we find. Yes, some have nothing to do with the mysterious lost part of our history, but some have. It may even shed light on how such large stones were quarried and lifted into place, as only giants, very advanced technology, or ingenious architects could have achieved such a gargantuan task in the distant past. This was an article first published in Código Alto, and it's published from Ancient Mysteries on Collective Spark. It's from a Spanish article. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.